The fire within, rise beyond the ordinary. In the quiet town of Willowbrook, nestled in the crook of a gentle river, lived a young woman named Evelyn. Her days were filled with the mundane rhythms of her job at the local library and the soft whispers of the books she cherished. With her nose buried in tales of heroes and adventures, she often dreamed of a life beyond the familiar streets she had known all her life. Evelyn's eyes, a vibrant shade of green, hinted at the fiery spirit that lay dormant beneath her timid exterior. Her hair, a soft brown that reflected the warmth of 1,000 sunsets, cascaded down her back, unnoticed by the townsfolk as she walked to work each morning. Her smile was gentle, but it didn't quite reach her eyes, which held the weight of 1,000 untold stories. Her colleagues knew her as reliable and kind, always eager to help a lost child find their favorite book, or an old man with trembling hands locate the newspaper. Yet, even amidst the comforting scent of aged paper and the hushed tones of the library, Evelyn felt a restlessness that grew with each passing day. One evening, as she was closing up, a peculiar book caught her eye. It was small, with a worn leather cover and pages yellowed by time. The title, Ignite the Flame, was written in faded gold letters, almost invisible in the dim light. Intrigued, she took it home, unaware that this simple act would soon set her life ablaze with a purpose she had never dared to imagine. The words within the book spoke of a hidden world where one's deepest desires could be transformed into reality through sheer will and determination. The stories of the heroes and adventurers she had read about no longer felt like distant fantasies, but rather like mirrors reflecting a potential version of herself. As the days turned into nights, Evelyn found herself devouring the book's wisdom, her heart racing with every page turn. Her dreams grew vivid and intense, filled with scenes of her standing tall and powerful, a beacon of hope in a world that needed it. The whispers of doubt that had once haunted her grew quieter with each passing night, replaced by a murmur of excitement and anticipation. A flame of ambition began to burn within her, and she knew she could no longer ignore the call to adventure that the book had awakened. The following day, she made a decision that shook the very foundations of her existence. With trembling hands, she pennied a letter of resignation to her boss, Mr. Jenkins. As she dropped it into the mailbox, she felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Her heart pounded in her chest like the beat of a war drum, echoing the rhythm of change that she had so desperately sought. Her colleagues watched her with a mix of surprise and admiration as she packed her things. They whispered among themselves, wondering what could have sparked such a transformation in their quiet, unassuming friend. Little did they know that Evelyn was about to embark on a journey that would not only redefine her, but also the very essence of Willowbrook itself. The town, which had been her cocoon, now felt suffocatingly small. She yearned for the open road and the thrill of the unknown. With nothing but a backpack filled with essentials and the book as her compass, she set out to conquer the world that lay beyond the horizon. The first steps were the hardest, her boots echoing on the cobblestone streets that had been her world for so long. But with each stride, her confidence grew, fueled by the fire within. She knew that she would face challenges, but she was ready. For the first time in her life, Evelyn felt truly alive. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the town in a warm embrace of orange and pink. As the stars began to emerge, one by one, they seemed to wink at her in silent encouragement. The night air was cool and carried the faint scent of adventure, whispering to her of the greatness that awaited her. Evelyn took a deep breath and looked back at the library, the place where her transformation had begun. It was a symbol of her old life, but now it was also the gateway to her new one. With a final nod to the quiet town she was leaving behind, she turned and walked away, her heart beating in time with the pulse of the world that lay ahead. The first few days of her journey were filled with excitement and a touch of fear. Each morning, she would wake before the sun, the chill of dawn nipping at her cheeks as she broke camp and set out anew. She had never felt so alive, the very air around her crackling with the potential she had discovered within herself. Her first unexpected challenge came in the form of a storm. Rain pummeled her small tent, and the wind howled through the trees like a beast seeking to devour her whole. But she remained steadfast, reading the book by candlelight as the storm raged on outside. The words spoke of inner strength and the power of perseverance, and she took them to heart. When the tempest finally abated, she emerged wet but unbroken, her resolve stronger than ever. In a dusty town many miles from Willowbrook, she stumbled upon an old man, his eyes twinkling with mischief and his voice rich with the accent of a seasoned traveler. He spoke of a place where dreams could be made real, where the whispers of destiny grew into a roar. His words echoed through her, resonating with the flame that had been kindled by the book. Without a second thought, she decided to follow his cryptic directions, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The path grew steep and treacherous, but Evelyn pushed on, driven by a force that she could not explain. The book had become more than just a guide. It was a part of her now, a living testament to the fire she had discovered within. And as she climbed higher, she felt the weight of her past life fall away, leaving only the promise of what was to come. The air grew thinner, and the world grew quieter until, at last, she reached a clearing. There, nestled in the folds of the mountain, was a small hut with a plume of smoke curling from its chimney. It was the home of her mentor, a woman named Arya, whose eyes were the color of the night sky and whose smile was as warm as a campfire on a cold evening. Arya took one look at the book in Evelyn's hand and nodded knowingly. "You've come far," she said, "but the real journey is just beginning." Evelyn's heart swelled with excitement and a touch of trepidation. She had taken the first step, leaving the safety of her known world behind. Now she was ready to face whatever trials lay ahead, her inner fire burning brighter than ever before. With Arya's guidance, she would learn to harness her newfound power and fulfill the destiny that called to her from the pages of Ignite the Flame. The days with Arya were demanding, yet exhilarating. She taught Evelyn the ancient art of tapping into one's inner strength, pushing her to face her fears and overcome physical challenges that seemed insurmountable. Each dawn, she would rise with the sun, her muscles aching from the rigorous training of the day before, but her spirit remained unyielding. One evening, as they sat around the fire, Arya handed her a worn journal. "Write," she instructed, her eyes gleaming with the light of the flames. "Write about what you've learned, what you've seen, and what you wish to become." Evelyn took the journal, feeling the weight of the untold chapters of her life waiting to be pennied. Each night, she would scribble down her thoughts and reflections, her handwriting growing steadier and more confident with every entry. But it was not just the physical and mental challenges that tested her resolve. It was also the quiet moments of self-reflection that shook her to her core. One day, as she stumbled upon a clear lake, she caught a glimpse of her reflection. The woman staring back at her was no longer the shy librarian, but a warrior in the making, her eyes alight with a determination that had been forged in the crucible of change. It was a humbling moment that made her realize just how far she had come and how much farther she had to go. With her mentor's wisdom and the book as her guide, Evelyn began to understand the true meaning of purpose. She realized that the fire within her was not just a force to be harnessed, but a beacon to light the way for others. The townsfolk she had left behind, the friends and family who had doubted her, they too had fires burning deep within, waiting to be kindled. The quiet town of Willowbrook grew smaller and smaller in her thoughts as she ventured into the vast wilderness of her potential. Yet, it was her love for them, her desire to bring change and hope to their lives, that fueled her journey. Her transformation was not just for herself, but for the world she had always dreamed of. In the months that followed, Evelyn's skills grew, and so did her confidence. She learned to navigate the dense forests, to speak to the animals that called them home, and to harness the power of the elements themselves. Yet, it was the simple act of rising early, of facing each day with a clean slate and an open heart, that became the foundation of her new life. Each morning, as the first light kissed the horizon, she would stand at the edge of the clearing, the book open in her hands, and whisper the words that had become her mantra: "I am the fire, and I shall rise." It was a declaration of intent that resonated through the mountains, a promise to herself and to the world she had left behind. And as she grew stronger, so did the flame within her, until it was no longer just a spark, but a blaze that could not be contained. The time had come for her to return to Willowbrook, to share her newfound knowledge, and to help others find the fire that lay dormant within them. Her heart pounded with excitement and fear as she approached the familiar gates. The townsfolk she had once known would see her in a new light, a light that she had carried with her from the top of the world. But she was ready, for she had learned that the only limits that truly exist are the ones we place upon ourselves. And she was determined to break free of those chains, to show the people of Willowbrook that they too could rise beyond the ordinary. The journey had been long and fraught with peril, but it had been worth every step. As she stepped into the town square, the book in her hand no longer just a guide, but a symbol of her triumph, she knew that she had only just begun. Her story, once a quiet whisper, was now a roar echoing through the streets of Willowbrook and beyond, inspiring those who dared to listen. Evelyn woke each day before the sun, her body moving with a newfound grace as she practiced the ancient exercises Arya had taught her. The whispers of doubt that had once plagued her now seemed like a distant memory, drowned out by the crackling of the fire she had stoked within her soul. Her days were no longer filled with the predictable rhythm of the library, but with the pulse of purpose that drove her to study, to learn, and to grow. Her family and friends watched from the sidelines, their skepticism as palpable as the morning mist. They whispered behind her back, questioning her newfound fervor, suggesting she should be realistic. But Evelyn had seen the horizon, had felt the warmth of the sun that lay just beyond the comfort of the familiar. She knew that this was not a path that could be walked with their understanding, nor one that could be turned back from without regret. In the quiet moments, when fatigue and doubt threatened to snuff out her flame, she would take out the journal Arya had given her. The pages, filled with her thoughts and dreams, had become a tapestry of her soul's evolution. Each entry a battle cry against the tyranny of the ordinary, each line a promise to herself to never again settle for less than she knew she could achieve. The whispers grew louder, the doubt more insidious, but she had a weapon against them now. Within the pages of her journal, she had captured her moments of triumph and failure, a reminder that she was not alone in her struggle. Each word was a declaration of war against the voices that sought to hold her back, the ink a testament to her resilience. And so she marched forward, her symbolic armor made of the pages that had borne witness to her growth. The people of Willowbrook began to take notice of the changes in their once shy librarian. The flame within her grew brighter, and it was contagious, igniting sparks in the hearts of those who had forgotten how to dream. Her journey had just begun, and she knew that the path ahead was steep and fraught with challenges. Yet she faced each one with the fierce determination that had become her trademark. The whispers of doubt had turned to ash in the face of her unyielding spirit, and in their place grew a symphony of belief, a chorus of voices that sang of the greatness that lay within her and within every person who dared to look. The first few weeks were a blur of early mornings and late nights. Her muscles screamed in protest as she pushed herself beyond what she thought possible, her mind a whirlwind of new knowledge and skills. Yet she clung to her journal like a talisman, her handwritten words a bastion of hope amidst the chaos of doubt. It was a record of her battles, both won and lost, a testament to her refusal to succumb to the tyranny of the mundane. The townsfolk watched her transformation with a mix of awe and suspicion. Her family, unable to comprehend her newfound passion, suggested she be realistic, that she should find a proper job and settle down. But the fire in Evelyn's heart had become an inferno, and she knew that she would not, return to the life she had known before. The journal grew thick with her thoughts and dreams, each page a stepping stone in her quest for self-discovery. Within its pages, she had written a promise to herself, a vow to never again let fear dictate her path. It was a promise that she read each night before sleep claimed her, her hand tracing the words as if they held the power to ward off the shadows of doubt that still lurked in the corners of her mind. The battles were not just with the external world, they were with the demons of procrastination, fatigue, and failure that plagued her from within. Yet she was not alone. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world slept and the flames of doubt danced in the shadows, she had her mentor's voice, her own written words, and the whispers of the heroes from the book to keep her company. Each time she faced a setback, each time she stumbled and fell, she would take a moment to breathe, to remember her promise. The ink on the pages was a reminder that she had faced darkness before and emerged stronger for it. With each victory, no matter how small, she grew in power and resolve. Her flame had become a beacon, drawing others to her side. The whispers grew quieter, the shadows shorter. The fire within her no longer flickered but roared, a constant reminder of her purpose. Her friends and family began to see the change in her, the light that burned in her eyes and the strength that had taken root in her soul. They had not understood her journey, but they could not deny the transformation that had taken place. One by one, they approached her, their questions tentative but earnest. They spoke of their own dreams, their own fears, and the embers of hope that had been buried deep within them. And with every story she heard, every whisper of doubt she helped to extinguish, Evelyn's fire grew brighter, her purpose clearer. The town of Willowbrook was changing, and it was changing because of her. The people she had once known as strangers were now confidants, their hearts alight with the flames she had helped to kindle. And as she watched the embers of their dreams catch fire, she knew that she had found her true calling. The quiet librarian was no more. In her place stood a leader, a warrior of the light, ready to guide her people to the promised land she had glimpsed in the pages of Ignite the Flame. Her journey was not just about personal growth, but about igniting the fires within the hearts of those around her, about helping them find their own paths to greatness. With her journal in hand, her heart swollen with love for her town, and the fire of purpose burning in her soul, Evelyn began her daily ritual of self-discovery. Each dawn broke to find her rising before the rest of the world, her body stretching and moving in a dance of determination. The whispers of doubt grew faint as she trained her mind and body to conquer the challenges of the day ahead. Her friends and family watched from a distance, their eyes filled with doubt and their lips whispering words of caution. But she knew that the path to greatness was not one trodden by the masses, and she marched on, her steps echoing the rhythm of change. The townsfolk of Willowbrook had grown accustomed to their quiet librarian living a quiet life. The sight of Evelyn, her muscles rippling with the strength of her newfound resolve, her eyes gleaming with the light of ambition, was as strange to them as the whispers of magic that fluttered through the pages of the books she once read. They laughed at her early mornings, her insatiable thirst for knowledge, and her tireless work ethic. Yet she knew that the only way to prove them wrong was to never give up, to never let their doubt extinguish the flame within her. The journal Aria had given her became her most cherished possession. Within its pages, she recorded her battles with procrastination, her moments of victory over fatigue, and her quiet triumphs over self-doubt. Every failure was a lesson, every setback a stepping stone, and she studied her own words as fervently as she studied the ancient texts that held the secrets to her power. Each night, as the town slept, she would read her entries aloud, letting the whispers of her own voice drown out the mockeries of the day. Her symbol of strength grew thicker with each passing week, the ink a map of her soul's evolution. It was a testament to the battles she had fought and the ground she had claimed. The pages held her darkest moments, the times she had felt like giving up, but also the moments when she had found the will to push on, to keep stoking the fire that burned within her. It was her compass, her shield, and her sword, guiding her through the storms of doubt that sought to drench her spirit. The whispers grew to murmurs, and the murmurs grew to a buzz. Stories of the girl who had dared to dream beyond the town's limits began to circulate, and with them, the first embers of curiosity. Her friends and family watched as she grew stronger, her eyes no longer clouded with doubt, but shining with a purpose that could not be denied. They began to see the truth in her words, the possibility in her dreams, and slowly their mockery turned to admiration. One by one, they approached her, their eyes filled with questions and hope. They spoke of their own desires, their own fears, and the embers of potential that had lain dormant within them. They had watched her fight, and now they wanted to know how she had done it. And as she shared her story, her journal open between them, they too began to feel the warmth of the fire that burned in her heart. The pages of Ignite the Flame had become dog-eared with use, the words of wisdom staining her fingertips as she shared them with her newfound companions. Together, they formed a fellowship of the fiery-hearted, a group of individuals united by their refusal to accept the ordinary. They gathered in the quiet of the library after hours, their whispers of hope and dreams echoing through the hallowed halls that had once been her solitary sanctuary. The town of Willowbrook, once a bastion of predictability, was now a crucible of change. The whispers of doubt had not disappeared entirely, but they were no longer the deafening roar that had once held her back. They had become the background noise to the symphony of growth and transformation that played out in the hearts of those who had dared to listen to her message. The flame that had been kindled within Evelyn had spread, and as she watched the embers catch in the eyes of her friends and neighbors, she knew that her journey was far from over. It had just begun, a journey that would lead her beyond the confines of the town she loved, to places she had only dreamed of in the pages of her favorite books. With her journal as her guide and the fire of her purpose as her beacon, she continued to rise before the sun, her body moving in harmony with the exercises Arya had taught her. Each dawn brought a new challenge, a chance to test the limits she had once thought were insurmountable. The cold air nipped at her skin, but she reveled in it, feeling the sting as a reminder of the battles she had faced and the victories she had won. Her days were a dance of discipline, her every move a declaration of war against the shackles of doubt and fear. The whispers of doubt grew quieter with every passing day, replaced by the murmurs of change that rippled through Willowbrook. Her family and friends, once the loudest of her naysayers, began to watch her with a newfound respect. They saw the determination in her eyes, the power in her stride, and the unshakable resolve that had taken root in her soul. Yet there were still those who clung to the familiar, who whispered of being realistic, and warned her of the folly of dreaming too big. But Evelyn had a weapon against their doubt, a promise she had made to herself, etched in ink upon the pages of her journal. It was a promise to never let the flame within her die, to keep pushing forward no matter the cost. The book itself had become a symbol of her transformation, a talisman she held close in the darkest moments, her hand tracing the words of encouragement she had written during her most difficult times. As she grew in strength and wisdom, so too did the whispers of her success. The town began to see her not as the girl who had once been content with the quietude of the library, but as the woman who had dared to dream beyond their borders. They watched in awe as she moved through the streets, her eyes alight with the fire of purpose, her every step a declaration of intent. The whispers grew to shouts, the shadows of doubt retreating before the blaze of her conviction. Her family, once skeptical, now offered tentative support, their words of caution replaced by tentative questions of her newfound knowledge. Her friends, inspired by her courage, began to share their own dreams, their own whispers of hope that had been smoldering beneath the surface. And it was in these moments, as the town she had always known began to reshape itself in the image of the world she had discovered, that Evelyn truly understood the power of the fire within her. It was not just a force for her own growth, but a beacon that could illuminate the path for others. Each dawn was a new opportunity to show them the way, to help them find their own fires and watch as they too grew into the heroes they were meant to be. Her journal, now a testament to her journey, grew thick with the tales of her battles and her triumphs. The pages, once empty, were now a map of the soul, a blueprint for the future she had claimed as her own. The whispers of doubt had been silenced by the roar of her ambition, and the quiet town of Willowbrook had become a stage for the greatest adventure she could ever imagine. With every sunrise, Evelyn felt the weight of her promise to Arya, to herself, and to her town. The journey ahead was fraught with challenges she could not yet fathom, but she knew she was ready. The whispers of doubt had been replaced by the cheers of those who believed in her, and their voices fueled her every step. The flame within her had become a bonfire, a beacon of hope that could not be extinguished. She had faced her fears, conquered her limits, and now she stood tall, ready to face whatever destiny had in store. The whispers of doubt had become the background noise to the symphony of her life, a reminder of how far she had come and how much further she had to go. The journal remained her constant companion, a reminder of her vows and her victories. It was a symbol of the strength she had found and the battles she had won. Each night, as she lay her head upon her pillow, she would read the words she had written, her voice a whisper in the dark, a declaration of war against the forces that sought to hold her back. The whispers of doubt had not disappeared entirely, but they were no longer the deafening roar that had once held her captive. They were now the whispers of the wind, the echoes of a battle long since won. And with every page she turned, every word she wrote, Evelyn felt the flame within her grow stronger. Her journey had become the talk of the town. The quiet librarian who had once walked the streets with her eyes cast downward was now the heroine of Willowbrook. People looked to her with hope, their own dreams reflected in the fiery green of her gaze. They saw in her the possibility of a life beyond the mundane, a world where magic was not just a tale told by the crackling fire. One by one, they approached her, seeking guidance, seeking to kindle their own flames. And she, humbled by their faith, took them under her wing. She taught them the ancient exercises, shared the wisdom of the book, and whispered to them the secrets of the fire that burned within. They grew in number, a fellowship of the fiery-hearted, each one a testament to the power of belief. As the sun set on another day of growth and learning, Evelyn sat in the library, her eyes scanning the pages of her journal. The whispers of her past now held a different tune, a melody of hope and determination. She knew that she had found her purpose, not just in the pursuit of her own dreams, but in the ignition of others. The dawn broke, and once again she was there, standing tall, her body a testament to the strength of her will. The townsfolk had grown accustomed to her early rise, and some had even begun to join her, drawn by the warmth of her spirit and the promise of a better tomorrow. They watched as she moved through the exercises with the grace of a dancer and the precision of a warrior. Her mother, who had once wept with fear for her daughter's soul, now watched with pride as she guided the newcomers, her voice a gentle whisper of encouragement. The whispers of doubt had been replaced by the cheers of those she had inspired, and their belief in her was a balm to her heart. The story of Evelyn and her book had spread beyond the confines of Willowbrook. Travelers brought tales of the town where dreams had come to life, where the impossible had become the ordinary. And as the whispers grew into a chant, so too did her resolve. She knew that her journey was not just for herself, but for every soul that yearned for more. Each morning, as she watched the horizon, the book in her hand and her heart filled with fire, she knew that this was only the beginning. The whispers of doubt had turned to ash in the face of her unyielding spirit, and in their place grew the roar of 1,000 voices, each one a declaration of intent to rise beyond the ordinary. And as the sun crested the horizon, she whispered the words that had become her mantra, "I am the fire, and I shall rise." The townsfolk watched, their hearts swelling with hope and a newfound belief in themselves, for in her eyes they saw the reflection of their own greatness. The story of Evelyn and the fire within her grew, inspiring others to seek their own paths to greatness. Her days were now filled with the joy of teaching and the satisfaction of watching her students grow. Each dawn, she awoke with the same passion and determination, her commitment to the flame unwavering. In the quiet moments before the world stirred, she would take her journal and pen, her thoughts a whisper in the stillness. The pages had become a map of her soul's journey, a testament to the power of perseverance and the beauty of dreams made real. The whispers of doubt had not disappeared entirely, but they had been drowned out by the roar of her purpose. And as she watched the sun rise, the book open in her hands, she knew that she had become more than she had ever dreamed. Yet, the journey was not over. It had only just begun, a never-ending quest to spread the fire of hope and change. The townsfolk of Willowbrook had grown to love the fiery librarian who had once been their quiet neighbor. They had seen the transformation in her, the light that had grown from a flicker to a flame that now lit the way for so many. Her name was spoken with reverence and awe, a symbol of the potential that lay within each of them.